The most anticipated earnings releases for the week of November 18, 2024. Presented by earningswhispers. The number of companies reporting earnings this week falls to fewer than 150. There was a time we would consider earnings season over by now, but there is one obvious reason why this week remains important. On Monday, most of the interest will be on those reporting after the close, with Symbotic at the top of investors' focus. The stock gapped lower last quarter on rather disappointing results and outlook, and subsequently traded to new lows during the quarter. Since then, however, the stock has filled its earnings gap, which may mean the short-term trade is over, but that isn't exactly bearish price action either. Trip.com, on the other hand, has traded to new highs after reporting A-plus earnings last quarter. The China economy has its woes, but travel hasn't been one of them. Tuesday morning will be mostly about Walmart, which missed lofty expectations last quarter, but that hasn't dampened sentiment any, as the company continues to take share from brick-and-mortar retailers as well as going after Amazon online. Later that morning, we'll get results from Workhorse, which has just simply gotten crushed from its split-adjusted $800 level in 2021. Of course, investors weren't shorting it back in 2021, at least like they are now, with short interest reaching a peak going into earnings. That's particularly interesting because the stock just had its highest volume ever last week, as it roughly doubled in price. It is almost as if someone is trying to get out of a crowded trade before some big event. Then, of course, on Wednesday, we'll get results from Nvidia. Despite missing expectations last quarter and the stock selling off on the news, estimates have been revised higher during the quarter and the stock rallied to new highs. Meanwhile, sentiment is more muted this time around than it was going into earnings last quarter. While you are waiting 20 minutes after the close for Nvidia to report, we'll get results from Snowflake. The company has had its handful of problems in 2024, mostly stemming from management changes. But the real issue has been simply the fact that all that processing getting done on Nvidia's GPUs isn't resulting in an increase in consumption. At least not yet. On Thursday, investors' focus will be in a couple of China names. Baidu and PDD Holdings report before the open, and there are some other names too. But the key has been that despite the low bar and the increased stimulus in China, we've yet to see the positive results that analysts were looking for this quarter. There are more than just two companies reporting on Friday, but only Addix Therapeutics and Global Blue have analyst estimates. Chances are, though, you don't know these two companies. Most of the elevated volatility going into earnings this week are for the China names, with the main exception being Workhorse, which I've already mentioned. There is a surprisingly high amount of interest in Powell Industries going into earnings. Perhaps that is because the stock just went from $250 to over $350 and looks to be heading back to $250 within a 2-week period. But really, option traders are pricing in a smaller than average move for the stock going into earnings. There is a surprisingly high amount of interest in Powell Industries going into earnings. Perhaps that is because the stock just went from $250 to over $350 and looks to be heading back to $250 within a 2-week period. But really, option traders are pricing in a smaller than average move for the stock going into earnings. Shh.